Welcome back to the Horseshoe Lounge, and welcome back to the ongoing drama, the craziest offseason, or most, fascinating offseason in all of college football, which is happening right down the street from the Horseshoe Lounge at Roosters, which is a fun, casual joint. Justin Zwick, Bobby Carpenter, Bill Landis, and I am Austin Ward. And
are we going to be joined by Burm later?
We're going to have some Burm later.
That's good. I like that.
We'll get into some of the recruiting major moves, but
no one's more knowledgeable on lubricants and oils than Burm.
There's literally no question about that. And he was evaluating that in Roosters with the way that these mac and cheese bites.
How good they came out.
They're his favorite, and so Burm is a harsh critic.
He is a harsh critic.
Said last week he would have given him a 10. This week maybe a 7, 7.5. Something about he didn't think the oil was.
Maybe the oil, yeah.
Who knows? Listen, folks, I'm going to tell you this.
I don't know.
Burm he is the most negative Nancy, as we all know. So listen, stop by Roosters. The featured appetizer today on an Appetizer Threes Day is going to be mac and cheese bites. They're $3 all day long. Burm likes to put them in hot sauce. They got a great sour cream dipping sauce. There's a lot of different choices you can put on there. Whatever you want to do. My dad was advocating of putting mustard on everything, so he had my oldest son putting
spicy ranch and put that.
He had my oldest son putting mustard on his burrito the other day. So
what are we doing?
That's what I said. That's what I said. And he goes, "It's good on anything." I'm like,
mustard's the worst.
My dad loves yellow mustard. It is
interesting.
I call it white trash mustard. They go, it's not. Give me a spicy mustard.
Yeah,
give me
brown.
a honey mustard. Give me something else.
Give me
just the classic yellow mustard. And I go, you're putting it on a burrito. I don't even really know what to say about that.
Yeah, that can't
no one's ever put mustard and rice together because that sounds awful.
Well, as you can tell, this is a fun, casual conversation.
It was.
A fun, casual joint. And we're going to go back to talking about Ohio State, which I left for like 4 days and everything went
that's right.
crazy.
You made it back. You made it out alive. Good for you.
Everything went a lot better.
Once you went to Florida.
I'm going to leave.
Go back.
I'm going to leave more often. You predicted last week, Bob, it's going to be a big swing. And Ryan Day is going to connect with an offensive coordinator.
There were a couple guys I had in mind, and told you, an NFL.
Was this one of them?
This was one of them.
Okay.
Potentially an NFL guy who had head coaching experience in college and head coaching experience in the NFL. And on the offensive side, who you could get to come in. There's a very small selection set. I didn't want to necessarily ruin whatever the surprise would be. But Bill O'Brien, new offensive coordinator for Ohio State, was in the building on Friday, drove, all through the night or whenever, left Thursday, 11 and a half hours.
The man couldn't afford a flight. He's been an NFL head coach for...
I'm going to tell you this. The flights from Boston to here, it's a suboptimal situation, especially if you live out in Foxborough. It could be an hour and a half down to the airport, topped with another hour and a half waiting. You're going to have at least one connection, assuming that you connect that all and it works. You get here in Columbus, or you could just get in a car and drive across I-90.
You don't think this man's got a NetJets account, Bob? Come on.
Listen, and maybe he does. I don't know. But you know what? There's something.
He likes his car. He didn't want to rent.
There's something scenic about driving through the Adirondacks. The only worry that you have up there is hitting a 20-foot snowdrift on I-90.
Yeah.
If you can get through that, which it wasn't really snowy, he said, and it was good.
Okay. Well, he got here on Friday to get right to work. Well, what do you think of the hire, Jay-Z?
I love the hire. I felt, and I know it's happened before. So this is going to sound stupid, but every year, Saban would bring in somebody like Bill O'Brien. And I know he's done it before.
Or specifically
Bill O'Brien.
But you just kind of watch that and you go, that makes sense. They're going to be good. Because just getting those coaches with that kind of experience and just I think that's big. So I think this was a big boy move. Now is Ryan going to feel okay giving up his offense and saying, "Hey, Bill, I trust you. Let's go do this." That's to be seen. But as far as getting an OC and getting someone that can coach quarterbacks, has been around some of the great ones. I mean, everybody's seen the clip going around about how he gets after Tom Brady, and he's not afraid to be fiery and be that. And I think that's good for the quarterback room. I think it's good for the offense, and I think it's a huge hire. I think it's a great one.
I think there's like a tendency to evaluate him just based off the most recent results with New England, which were not great. And that would be...
People are besmirching Alabama. I'm like, this is one of the arguments, Bill, that someone goes, well, he was with Houston, New England. Or not Houston, New England and Alabama. And he didn't win any titles either one of those places. Like, oh, yes. He's the problem. It's him.
That's why they didn't win.
By the way, one of those guys, he did coach to a Heisman Trophy. So,
and they had like 40 points a game that year, didn't they?
I think New England did win some championships with Bill.
Not
O'Brien.
with him, actually. They did
Oh,
not.
they did?
They did not win a Super Bowl.
They played in them, but they didn't.
Okay,
win
got
them.
it. Got close.
That was his. It was his fault though.
Yeah, it was his fault. Yeah. It was-
Okay, well, I stand corrected.
Tom Brady won an MVP, but it was Bill O'Brien's
So
fault.
just a Heisman Trophy and an MVP?
Yeah, but I think the most impressive thing on Bill O'Brien's resume is that he made Matt McGloin a viable.
There you go.
NFL
Give it to him. That's right. the couple years he had at Penn State were
like,
terrible.
And he got Christian Hackenberg, the best out of Christian Hackenberg before James Franklin ruined him too.
Big Ten Coach of the Year, Bill O'Brien. Is
Wait.
Ryan Day? Has he won Coach of the Year?
There's not been.
I don't think
Ohio
there's been
State
an Ohio
coach.
State
Since Earl Bruce. I think that's it.
Actually, one of the criteria for winning the award now is that you do not coach at Ohio State. So
Oh
that
yeah,
makes sense.
and I get that, but that's I didn't think so. You've got a current Big Ten Coach of the Year on staff now.
Goodness.
That's big. He took a team that that Penn State 12 was a dumpster fire that he inherited, and then he'll talk. He's like, we go 0-2. With Virginia, we miss 1,000,000 field goals. But then they pull out and they end up going 8-2 over the back half of the season, and he salvages it and does a great job. But I think if you look at this on its face, Ryan wanted someone who could run the offense. Check. Bill O'Brien's going to do that. I think you wanted someone with a head coaching experience, someone that is older than him, that's been through it, college and NFL. That's the double check mark. So you can bounce ideas, program situations, that Kevin Wilson type vibe. He's got that. And then I also think a little bit of Kevin Wilson where, they're older guys, but both those guys have big personalities. They're energetic. Like they're going to infuse, I think, some of that juice into the offense. And so I think he kind of checks that at all three levels. And then the relationship with Julian Sayin, being able to potentially help bring him in. Like there's a lot of great things there. And like selling this as an NFL, hey, we've got one coach who was an NFL offensive coordinator. We got another coach who was an NFL head coach. And offensive coordinator. There's a lot to sell, I think, on that offensive side of the ball. And so I love this. I'm curious to see what they do with the rest of the staff. I know you're excited. Corey Dennis probably not leaving. They might have repurpose him in another role, potentially off field, maybe. I don't know how that'll all work, what that'll look like.
We'll see.
We'll see how this all shakes out, but it's not done yet. But I think it kind of hit everything that we were hoping that it would.
I think Ryan Day, and I don't mean this to be disparaging towards the guys who were in the room. I just think there's a lot of young guys on that offensive staff, and just not a lot of guys who have run offenses themselves. I think Ryan Day wanted to be able to leave the offensive meeting room and know that the work was going to get done that needed to get done. And Bill O'Brien, I think, is that guy with this wealth of experience. And I think it'll still be incredibly difficult for Ryan Day to give it up. We'll see. Even last year when he named Brian Hartline.
Maybe him and Billy will have a fight like Saban, like those guys on the sideline.
Maybe. Well, I think that might be part of it too, though, right? Bill O'Brien, I think, is
going to be honest with you. You got to be honest with him. Like I don't agree with this.
Maybe not this. Let's try this. And I don't was there another person in that room that could say that to Ryan Day? I don't know the answer for that. I think probably no.
I mean, they could have. It doesn't mean that
he would listen.
That Ryan Day would listen to it.
You have to have the pelts on the wall to be able to, like, hey, this isn't going to work.
I know what I'm talking about.
This is why, because we did this here, we've done that. Let's try this instead. And so you have to have somebody who, A, has another idea that might be better, B, has the confidence to say it, and C, has the resume.
Say, hey, this is why I'm thinking this, and this is where it's coming from.
Bill, when they talk about Bill O'Brien and his offense, what? It's hard to pin down for me. What is the actual scheme philosophy here?
Yeah, I won't pretend to be an expert in that. I know there's some West Coast roots there. I know I covered his first year at Penn State, and when he went there, everyone was freaking out about 12 personnel playing with 2 tight ends all the time. We'll see what he's able to do here. I think he's mostly coming to take over Ryan Day's offense. I don't think the offense we see out there is going to look vastly different from what we've come to expect over the last couple of years. But I am interested to see how Bill O'Brien adds some stuff here and there. I don't think when we talk about the run game, I don't think Bill O'Brien is or has been a big stretch guy, big outside zone guy. And Ryan,
I heard he loves stretch to the boundary. Sleggs is super excited.
So we'll
maybe go with a little pistol.
I was hoping that.
Yeah, we'll see how that meshes together. I would hope. I actually thought that Justin Fry, got them into some good stuff run game wise and was pushing them forward in a way that was necessary to kind of vary things up. I hope that continues, which is basically to say don't run stretch into the boundary every time. So we'll see about that, but mostly I do think that it is Bill O'Brien coming to run Ryan Day's offense, not Bill O'Brien coming to totally revamp the Ohio State offense.
And I think Bill is kind of equipped to handle that now because that's what Saban's philosophy always was. Like, you're coming here, I'm not going to teach 50 guys a new system. I'm going to teach one guy is going to learn the new system, and we can bring elements in there, but we're going to keep the same terminology and the same basic stuff. And from what I understand, I think that's kind of the game plan and premise. You talk about 12. By the way, the team that just won the national championship ran a lot of 12, 13. They did a lot of stuff that was counterculture that maybe teams weren't doing. And I think that there's an element that Ryan has done that. And I think that's why Bill was kind of excited. Hey, we can get under center a little bit. Now, maybe we're not going to make a living there for 40% of the downs, but get under center a little bit. Maybe have some 12. If we have 2 good tight ends, we'll use 2 good tight ends. If we have 2 good running backs, we'll get that in there, use some different wide receivers. Bill O'Brien, coaching under Bill Belichick and also Nick Saban, the one thing I would always say, and not playing for Nick, but playing for Bill, and similar to Parcells, and if you watched the Tampa Bay-Detroit game, those are 2 Parcells disciples, and it's all kind of the same philosophy. Like, they're pragmatic coaches. They have a system. It's like, what do we have available to us as far as guys, and what can we do to them that will confuse them and utilize this unique personnel group? And so it becomes very multiple based upon who's playing well and maybe who's healthy and what you have and what you want to attack.
So ultimately, this all comes back and is a reflection on Ryan Day. We talked last week about really the roster and the number of guys putting off the NFL and coming back, and how things had changed rather dramatically for the view and the perception and narrative of Ohio State. Then they had this week, where on top of the offensive coordinator, you had going to get Caleb Downs out of the transfer portal.
Not shattered dreams.
No, none at all. They're in one piece, Bob. And then you have. I don't think they can hear that. So,
well, I can hear it in my headset, so there's no chance.
I know you can. So, and then taking a 5-star, another kid from Alabama who was only there for a week or two, Julian Sayin.
They call it Bama North, I heard now.
That's they probably. I'm looking outside. I don't think that's going to be the case with the weather we've had in Columbus, but
it's supposed to be 50 degrees this week.
I'm just driving in, saw some more winter weather warning for tonight, Bob. So, make sure that the roads are clear before you come for Appetizer 3's Day. But if it feels to me, and I don't know if you guys all agree with this or not, that they're the more ruthless version of Ryan Day, perhaps the one that Ohio State needed, has arrived. There's a fine line between ruthlessness and recklessness, and I don't know that we'll know the answer to that until you actually get on the field in August and
Where do you
September.
put Dr. Lecter on there?
Well, that's a combination. He's in the middle.
Hannibal Lecter?
The ruthless, reckless Venn diagram is, if you put them together, it's just Hannibal Lecter. So I don't know. Well, there you go. Sound effect, Bob.
Hey, I mean, sometimes
you gotta give the people
sometimes does the kids say you got to go out there and eat? What is it? Is it fava beans and Chianti? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I think someone asked me on Twitter, like, is Ryan done if he doesn't get it done? I'm like, I don't ever like to put those ultimatums and live in a world like that.
I think you would objectively say,
but
I don't think that's going.
Michigan is obviously going to have a lot of issues next year. I'm assuming Jim Harbaugh is probably going to get one of these jobs that's out there. But even if he doesn't, there's a lot of guys they lost. Ohio State is coaching and Ryan is making decisions. We're all in. Like, we've pushed the chips to the middle. We're getting the best possible roster we can. I'm getting the best possible staff. And we're going at this thing 100 miles an hour next year. And we're going to need depth, because this isn't just like to beat Michigan. I think that's obviously number one. We've got to get that done. But then with this 12-team playoff, we're going to need a depth of a roster to potentially win 16 or 17 games, however that looks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that looks. I mean, bringing a lot of people. We talked about this last week. It's great. And we're shoring up some spots, getting some extra bodies. But we still have, with the exception of one guy, the same guy's protecting on the offensive line. And that's where I think is the biggest issue. So although it's all great and everybody's been, we've been excited, we've been celebrating. Oh my gosh, we got another one. And my response to my guys is, that's great.
Yeah.
Is Will or Howard going to run around and do a lot of stuff next year? Or, we're going to go and get this taken care of. So this is all awesome. I mean, it's great. A lot of awesome momentum for Ohio State, for the program. coming out of a bowl season where you didn't know exactly what was going to happen or how it was going to go. It's gone as good as it could. But I don't know if there's anybody else out there, if they're looking at anybody else, or wait until the spring, or they're just going to roll with the guys they have and say, hey, listen, we really do like where they're at, with the exception of that bowl game, and we're going to roll with these guys and just see how it goes coming into the next year.
The tackle. Is there a tackle from Bama that's also in the portal?
Already gone.
He went to Iowa.
Oh, Iowa.
Yeah.
He's from Iowa.
Is he wanting to not be on the field that much and not score points?
He wanted half the snaps. Yeah.
He really likes field goal team, and he knows he's going to get a lot of field goal reps up there.
Load management. I like that.
I mean, Brian Ferentz is gone. Everything will be fixed.
That is true.
That's key.
All you had to do is get rid of him, and they're going to be scoring all kinds
Problem
of points.
solved. Also, their best developer of offensive linemen.
But I think when you look at that, and it's a very valid point, Justin. What you're making, it's not a wet blanket. So you bring in one guy, so that's a little bit. You do have Donovan Jackson coming back. I think that helps a little bit. You got Fryer coming back. Simmons coming back. Hinsman, like you add a little bit. Maybe they add somebody in the spring as well.
They don't have to. They get to evaluate that in March and April, and that's what they did last year, Bob.
It's that to grow. Do you get better through external additions or internal growth? And offensive linemen take the longest of anybody when you recruit to develop those guys into viable players. And I think they felt like they had some guys that were close last year. Luke Montgomery, I think, is going to be really good. He might be a guy that you could put out there and contribute and play next year. Probably wasn't ready last year, but after we're talking 8-9 more months from now, I think that he would be ready to go out there and be able to play at the requisite level, which is, Ryan Day, is this a national championship position? Like, you have to ask yourself that, because that's what your goal, you're aiming for and you're going for. I know this defense is going to be really good. This might be one of the best defenses they've had here in the last 25 to 30 years. And I would be disappointed if it's not in that conversation, because bringing in Caleb Downs gives you the ability then to move Sonny Styles, which helps shore up that linebacker room immensely. And not to mention how good Caleb Downs is independently of that situation. So now you have two guys in Lathan Ransom and Cody Simon who have played a lot of football, who are really smart. They're good tacklers. They're going to make sure they get everybody lined up, and they're going to always do the right thing. And you compare those guys with a level of dynamicism that we haven't seen there, probably those positions in a little bit. And that's something that is very exciting if you're Jim Knowles, I think.
We were speculating about that, Bill, before Caleb Downs went in the portal and then picked Ohio State shortly after.
Burm said he wasn't going to.
The crystal ball doesn't work every time. That's why there's smoke and clouds inside. You don't always get a clear vision. They're not perfect tools for predictions.
Okay.
They're just useful, input, like the weather. You never know.
Like the weather, man.
Say 50% chance of rain.
It might snow tomorrow.
50% chance of Caleb Downs, and now does that mean 100% chance of Sonny Styles at linebacker? I guess we'll find out.
I hope so, man, because they need to have Sonny and Jordan Hancock on the field all the time, in my opinion. So I would like to see them make some moves to do that. And then you ask what's that mean for C.J. Hicks? I would like to see C.J. Hicks probably play down closer to the line of scrimmage. Jim Knowles,
it just gives you flexibility though to be able to kind of do some things.
Yeah, and Jim Knowles, he was asked, I think pretty point blank, do you think was it by you maybe at the Cotton Bowl? C.J. Hicks, could he possibly play it out on the line of scrimmage? Jim Knowles was like, yeah, kind of. I think that's where we see him. So,
do you think we could play him down at the line of scrimmage?
That's another matter entirely, isn't it?
I don't know.
Could he do it?
I think he could do it. I think he should do it. I mean, honestly, and that's, again,
not physically can he do it. I'm saying, will the opportunity present itself
on the field to do it?
I don't know if you were picking up what I was
know what you're saying. I want to give them the credit where it's due, and last year that defensive line was really good, and they're all coming back, and I think that was part of it. We're talking about what Bill brings it up, and would that be the best use for C.J. Hicks? Could he do Baron Browning things? I think he could. It's not even just
the end of his innocence.
It's not even just Larry Johnson and a willingness to play a jack or use a hybrid defender. Now you're in a situation where you have JT and Jack coming back. Yep. Do you have a need? Is there a positional need and playing time available for C.J. Hicks there? And maybe there isn't. I don't know. We'll see what happens in March.
Kenyatta Jackson, you have
Kenyatta and a lot of guys up there. You still have Mitchell Melton around to do some of those things. I think that C.J. Hicks would have a higher ceiling to do jack position and hybrid work than maybe anybody else on that roster. But again, that is the part that's contingent on Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson deciding that path forward, because there has been a reticence to use that spot in a way that I think Jim Knowles wants to.
What I love, though, with this is either way, I like it. Tress used to always say, a pair and a spare, Justin.
That's right.
You want to have position depth. You have Malik Hartford, who played well last year, good young player. So you have kind of 3 safeties you feel for 2 spots. You have Jermaine Dupree, where to party at Johnson, as a corner that you can throw out there, who's really good, played very well as a freshman to pair with those other 3 guys, and then you've got a bevy of defensive linemen, and then you have C.J. Hicks, Sonny Styles, and then Cody Stein. Like, having 3 guys for 2 spots is good, because as we saw last year, like, guys get hurt, and this season is gonna. Yeah. If it goes the way that you want it to, you're going to probably need to be playing 15 to 16 to 17 guys fairly regularly on the defense. And that's just not a defensive line rotation. That's some linebackers. That's some secondary as well.
Yeah. I just feel like I'm watching, the end of the college football season, these teams that are in the playoff. I'm not saying that every team does this, but I just feel like I see a lot of teams kind of embracing their versatility. Like, not the defensive front does not look the same on every single snap, and you watch Ohio State play, and the defensive front more or less looks the same on every single snap in terms of alignment.
It literally did with the people, though, this year, too.
Yeah, well, the alignment and people.
Austin wanted the guys to play more, so they did.
There's a balance there, I think, and
it's a fine
there was
line.
probably a little bit of an overcorrection. They played really well. I'm not taking anything away from the line, but the line was great this year. But I do think Ohio State does itself a disservice sometimes by not mixing it up. Like, play a 3 down, play a 5 down, put 8 guys on the line and drop them out and see what, like, there's not a lot of variance there, I think, in what you're going to get from Ohio State's defense. And there is, certainly value to playing it straight up, playing sound, not giving up big plays, which is what they did incredibly well last year. But I think now with everything they have coming back, with a handful of multi-positional guys, there's a chance for them, I think, to get really creative if they want to.
And I think that, Bill O'Brien being on offense, I understand that, but him being a head coach and looking across at that and understand, like Ryan, like, they have the ability to be very multiple. Maybe there's a game where you lean in a little more 3 down. Maybe there's a game where it's a little more 4 down. And that's what makes it hard for coaches when you're scouting someone. Well, what are they going to do? Whatever they do, we'll get a game plan of it, but we've got to prepare for kind of multiple things, because we're not sure what they have the ability to get in all this, and we've watched them do it at a higher level. And so that's what's exciting to me. Playing for some coach, like, hey, this is a game where this is what we're going to utilize. We're going to utilize this. And you can look completely different game to game, but you have to have the personnel to be able to execute that. And this is the first time where I feel like, they have enough guys where, hey, maybe this game you're playing 60, 70% of the snaps, and maybe next game it's 30 to 35 to 40, somewhere in there. But you can rotate that way, keep guys fresh and healthy, and give them different exotic looks.
Well, and you got a nice, experienced offensive guy coming in and saying, hey, I'm seeing what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
This is, it'd be a lot harder on me if you were doing this, or, kind of switching things up a little bit. So, having somebody new come in, with some fresh ideas might be a good thing for both sides of the ball.
What? And they could be like, maybe don't run, stretching the boundary 10 times. Is that what you're suggesting?
Actually, I heard he's more.
He loves it.
No,
he wants to
He said the
problem
was the execution. He goes, we haven't got enough reps at it yet.
Need to do it more.
That's why they hired him, Austin.
Okay.
They love that in the boundary.
Well, maybe that was New England's problem last year. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I haven't watched enough film to know. Yeah, I think it was Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi.
Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, maybe that would have been a bigger issue, which shouldn't be the problem for Ohio State, which has added multiple quarterbacks in the offseason. We're going to talk about that a lot more in the second half of the show when Burm jumps in here with the latest developments.
Oh, boy.
With Julian Sayin.
Oh, boy.
We're going to let Bill go on with his day, and then we'll be right back in here at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint.
Roosters has been so fortunate. We just want to be able to give some of that back to the community.
They donate to organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long time.
They always go above and beyond to help support our foundation to further help veterans.
It's just a wonderful feeling to know that Roosters supports the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
And we're back in the Horseshoe Lounge. It's going to be even more fun and more casual.
Yes.
Because Burm's here.
Burm.
Happy Burm.
I want to talk about mac and cheese bites.
Okay.
Last week's we're a 10. Okay, because what you get is the temperature is proper, which is big when you're dealing with any fry.
And these are a 10 too because they were also made by Roosters, which sponsors the show. So come get them on Appetizer Thursday.
That's right.
As far as the appetizer hierarchy, we've already established the mac and cheese bites are at the top. I know some people argue mozzarella sticks, fine choice. But the mac and cheese, because it has mac and cheese in it, which is it's a meal on its own.
It is.
Usually you have a much better argument.
There's just a high standard. There's just a high
cheese.
standard for delivery.
Standard.
Well, you were a restaurateur as well, so you.
Yeah, but I worked in restaurants, and it's all about the temperature. And these are interesting because sometimes I think the interior consistency varies from week to week, and I don't know if it's a different supplier every week. I don't know if it's just a different batch, or if it's someone in the facility wherever they're making these put a little bit too much, cornstarch in it. I don't know. But
thanks for joining us for our last ever show in the Horseshoe Lounge because Nicole is not going to have us back.
I mean, they're still a very good 7, which 7's good. I mean, I'm a harsh critic. 7 is good.
They're delicious.
Last week's just happened to be a 10.
Okay.
You just were in the mood last week.
Tuesdays could be a 10 as well. It literally varies that much each time I eat them, and I eat them every week. I still keep going back.
Yeah,
it's not like I'm asking for something else.
You're going to be getting a
asking
strongly worded
for
memo
them to change
from
anything.
Nicole
It's
Cox.
just,
It's cool.
How dare you?
Might be.
He's always saying that because she's not here. Or else she'd punch him in the nose.
Yeah, I mean,
probably. She's a violent.
I thought he was.
Very
I
violent.
thought we were going to have optimistic
especially after
Burm
CJ
for
lost this
2024.
weekend. After the Texas loss.
She's depressed.
Which is why she's not here today, obviously.
Yeah, got to recover.
mourning and loss.
Celebrating last week and mourning this week. And that's the way the playoffs
That's
work.
how it rolls.
Taylor Decker won, though.
Yeah,
And Jonah Jackson.
Jonah Jackson.
rooting hard for the Lions at this point, I think.
Yes.
They're an easy team.
I
to
was
root
really
for.
rooting for a Bills-Lions Super Bowl because then you get a first-time winner either way.
Yeah, it's two fan bases that
saw-
have just been destroyed throughout their history. By the way, Bills destroyed one more time.
Yeah, wide right yet again. Sorry for Josh.
Saw
Allen
the
and
colors
Bills.
for the Super Bowl. You know who it's going to be.
I'm not surprised you buy into this theory, but I also am starting to buy into it myself.
Hey, come on.
no.
Come on down,
Jay-Z's
Burm.
Conspiracy Corner is
Come
back.
on down.
Are you familiar with this conspiracy?
Well, yes.
I got 3 out of the last 4 years, I think.
I work
Something
online,
along those lines.
so I'm familiar with Aaron Rodgers taking it to a larger
I'm
platform.
saying it doesn't seem.
Why else would those colors be in there?
It's
And
so
I saw a news clip somebody grabbed from a TV where the news station put on who was playing this or who was singing the songs in the 2024 Super Bowl featuring the two teams that we think that's supposed to be.
They already had the graphic already made.
There's a graphic, and I think they were supposed to cut out that last part, but they didn't.
Huh.
Just saying. We should talk about Ohio State football, though. It was
What a heck of a week.
Really good couple days for Ohio State. I think we'd spent a lot of time.
Is this the best non-game winning stretch that they've had in the last 5 years?
I think so, and I think you want to be careful about how much you celebrate it because Ohio State fans have rightfully for the last decade plus mocked the crap out of Michigan fans and other schools for winning the offseason or winning September Heismans or whatever. But you can't look at what's happened and be in a bad mood about it. That's a lot of really good stuff going on, and it's not finished yet. I mean, it was just as an hour before we started this show, Carter Lowe, the top ranked Ohio 2025 offensive lineman, he'll make his announcement this coming Saturday. So there's more good things coming down the road.
How about the Flipster getting the D lineman?
Dominic Kirk's committed.
Is he a 2024?
2024, yeah.
So he's one of the handful of guys who did not commit in the early signing.
He was committed to Washington and just didn't
sign.
Yeah,
he had. His defensive line coach had taken a job elsewhere at Washington, so he wanted to kind of wait and see. And then Caleb DeBoer
leave.
And then that happened, and then Ohio State was like, "Oh, you know what? We actually happen to need a 6'5", 250-pound defensive end. So
how about that?
Let's have a conversation." And then 1 week after he took his official visit, he commits. There's a lot of positive things happening, and but you also need to understand or continue to view it through the lens of this is happening at a time where it absolutely needed to happen because the mood and the conversations the previous 3 weeks were extremely dour. And
that was more negative, Burm.
It was not negative Burm. I was positive.
Negative Austin for sure.
I was telling these guys it's
negative a lot of
Austin said it felt like he was back in Knoxville.
I said it's going to happen. You just need to let things unfold. And
just waiting for a couple of arrests and player fights within the team.
I was listening.
I don't want to go back to 2009.
As I'm wont to do, I was listening to a podcast on my way into town today, and Steve Wiltfong from 247 Sports had mentioned that the way he viewed it was Ohio State and Ryan Day, and this goes into our conversation we had on the podcast daily. Like he said, it's like Ryan Day is trying to shave the one stroke off his game to go from like a 73 to a 72. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It's like when you've lost 50 pounds and you want to lose 5 more. Those last 5 are sometimes a lot harder to lose than the first 50. So
because the tapeworm's so big at that point, it actually weighs.
right,
it has weight itself
actually
now.
has a heft of its own.
Yeah.
So I really do think that's where Ohio State's at, and it's just like you can see all that positive momentum, but then you still also realize like there's a cliff at the end of this if this doesn't work.
Well, that's why, as I saw in Speed, you gas down even further, and you ramp that bad boy
Ramp that.
over the top.
And that's because you have no other option.
Yeah.
There's a bomb on the bus.
Yeah.
And there's
You got to keep it up.
a contract and a buyout that isn't untenable for a new athletic director, who, by the way, that also happened last week while I was gone.
That seems like a million years away now.
It all happened at once. I don't understand.
Can we spread the content a little bit?
Yeah,
We've got like another couple.
That's what I always say. Like, you need to spread out the good news.
You gave me 3-4 weeks worth of content in 4 days.
It's too
4
much.
days, yeah.
Spread it out.
It's
Keep
like,
something in your pocket.
you're like an epileptic at a strobe light convention right here. Like there's just so much information that you can't keep it together.
It's overwhelming.
But also kind of awesome.
Very awesome. Very awesome.
Because if I'm going to go down, I want to go down shaking.
Well, 100%. Eddie Money talked about it. We haven't heard that yet, by the way. That'd be great.
We will. That's coming through the mics today. The music's a little loud. So
Oh, it's fantastic.
we don't get dinged by YouTube.
What do you think about the Ross Bjork hiring? Because we haven't really touched on that yet.
I would have advocated for Pat Chun. I think
a lot of people did.
And a lot of people did.
I would, me being one of them,
Popular.
knowing Pat.
Not just you. I think pretty much everybody who's ever worked with Pat Chun at or around Ohio State advocated strongly for him. And my understanding is that the search committee advocated for Pat Chun as well.
Yes, I believe that to be accurate.
So I'm not a president. Guy wants to make his own choice.
Maverick.
I kind of love it.
Slapshot.
I love that part of it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know enough about Pat Chun or Ross Bjork to say like one way or the other. I know that the online community is super mad, and not Ohio State fans necessarily, but the whole college football complex this is a terrible hire, and to me that means it's probably pretty good.
I don't think I agree with that, but I'm not.
You don't agree with people being mad?
I've read enough where I'm like, this is so negative.
Yeah.
That it must be that it's good, because if they're writing this stuff, and then you read somebody else's name who has been through their own things as working at their job, and then it's just like, but they've done a great job, and it's like you just rained on this guy for anything bad that ever happened, and this guy you have nothing to say.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I'm like an aficionado of ADs around the country or what they do, but I know that I listened and watched the press conference on Wednesday when Ted Carter, which is the first time we've really heard him talk, and then hearing Bjork, and I was like, okay, these guys get it, and I actually liked that the president, who is a football guy.
So he's a sports dude.
That is a sports guy, which is very unusual in the presidential space in college anywhere right now. So, like, that to me was him going, you know what? I think a lot of people around here love Pat Chun. It's not obvious. It's not hard to figure out why. Washington State had a 0 NIL experience / space. I mean, that was part of the biggest problem last season. Their head coach was like lamenting that publicly, that we don't have a plan. And I just don't think that at Ohio State you can bring someone in that doesn't have a plan or experience with it. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the last month, that's what's happened with this current roster and the additions. Does Ohio State have a problem with NIL currently?
I think
you bring somebody in who has no pass or no, hey, we did this or we've done that,
or someone that may
to
be
help,
or someone that may be a touch more conservative in that space, or who comes from a more old school approach. I think that you run into potentially a problem. So that's where, like, my opinion is that Ted Carter was like, I want this guy because this is where we're going. We're on the freeway now. We're on the highway.
Yeah, it's not time to get off the little side, the 1-lane roads.
I'm not suggesting that I disagree with that part. What I was saying was, like, if everyone else says it's bad, it doesn't necessarily make it good, because the decisions that this man has made, high-profile ones, are are quite poor.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't hold
how many people sign off on all that.
The Jimbo thing, because I dug in on this, and so I talked to a guy who I know is very wired at A&M. He didn't hire Jimbo. They gave him the extension. And part of it is, as athletic director, I mean,
you're told.
Yes. And if there's people who are saying, this is what we're going to pay him, here's the money.
Yes.
Pay the man his money.
Those same people who decided 2 years later, we're going to pay this to get
now we're going to pay to fire him.
That's not him.
You're going to do it for us. But
he was asked about that at the press conference. I thought he did a great job. And he's like, I preferred something that was a little more incentive-based, which if you look at the Elko contract, we'll pay you this much, but only if you win.
It's not just about Jimbo and that buyout. And I'm not saying that this can't be a good hire either. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm not going to evaluate the future. Maybe Ross Bjork and Ohio State and Ted Carter wind up being a perfect fit together. We'll see. I don't know how you could look at Ross Bjork's overall resume at the places he's been and say this is the absolute best Ohio State can do. Because not only are there question marks from before at Texas A&M, but at the end in December of Texas A&M, this is a place that was taking a vote of no confidence, preparing a vote of no confidence, and may have done it privately to force him out of their school. He was going to be unemployed. Yeah. That doesn't generally make you marketable to Ohio State.
Again, to me, the same boosters that were mad that he wanted to hire Mark Stoops were going to revolt against him because he was going to go against what they wanted.
And that was almost a done deal, right?
They were the ones that wanted.
That's what I've been told.
That's what
They were the ones that wanted him to give Jimbo a big extension. He's taking the heat for it. Then he decides he doesn't want to listen to him the second time around, and they want to throw him out. Texas A&M is run by its boosters. It is run by those people. So, I understand that. It's not great. It's not a great look, but I don't buy it from these crazy people do things all the time, and it doesn't.
And we have that much money down there. They just hire and get rid of people.
They get to choose what happens.
They basically, from what I understood, I mean, Jimbo, the firing of him. The decision to move on came down during a game. The guy who I had talked to, he was I was walking around the suite level and there was two people hey, what are your thoughts on this? And then it was kind of hey, would you be willing to contribute? And then it was enough momentum was getting we're going to move on. Yeah. We've got enough.
I just left the suite down there.
We started off with the little.
They started passing the little basket around for money.
The easel to reach our goal. We were exploding the top off.
To Austin's point, though, does that mean Ohio State shouldn't have had a phone call with Greg Burn at Alabama?
Yeah.
Sure, they should have tried, especially when Nick Saban retired. Maybe the decision to hire someone didn't need to happen last week.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when Saban retired, maybe all of a sudden you make that call to Greg Burn and you say, this is Ohio State, you can go get anyone. But, I think the collection of skills that we've seen out of Bjork and what he's done, I don't know. I don't have a objection to it one way or the other.
I do like his SEC ties and the fact that, I think he has a fairly good relationship with Greg Sankey. And, he alluded to this. And I think both him and Ted Carter are aligned in this, where Ohio State, and there were some really good questions asked, and they were very pointed and direct. Number one, about the 36 sports, which I think they're going to do their best to make sure that maintains, but also how Ohio State's voice is interpreted in the room. And we're an 18-team conference where everybody has equal voices, but then they also both independently in their questions alluded to the fact that maybe some of the voices need to be a little louder or maybe need to speak just a little bit more. And so what I heard was that, hey, we're going to talk to Tony Petitti and we're going to start getting Greg Sankey on the phone. And as we begin to shape this, what college athletics looks like over the next couple of years, Ohio State is going to have a massive seat at that table in the small council, if you will, Game of Thrones style, of how this thing is going to work, which I don't think in the past has ever really been something that Ohio State has done. And much to the lamentations of folks around here, why are we not leading the way? Remember, Ted Carter at Nebraska was hey, screw the Big Ten and COVID. We're playing football. We'll go figure this thing out. Yeah. And so I think he wanted someone that kind of aligned with his vision. And I think Ross Bjork kind of had that.
Is Bjork Littlefinger? I don't know.
We'll have to see.
That's the problem, I think, for people. Like
he's just an unknown quantity.
Right. Is he willing to say
he's
whatever?
been climbing the ladder.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like maybe,
and he's emerged from the chaos.
Maybe there's a little maybe there's a little finger in him. Who knows?
That sounds gross.
Anything's possible.
But I think the other thing is Pat Chun
chaos is a ladder.
He's a Strongsville guy. It's really a great line. It's one of the great lines of all time in Game of Thrones. Chaos is a ladder.
One of the best monologues in television history.
But Pat Chun was a
Game of Thrones was.
I've watched the show. I just don't recall that part.
Got it.
Oh gosh, when they said that, it was so iconic. You have to watch with the subtitles because you can barely hear it sometimes. But they
that's how you watch everything when you have kids.
That is true. But when you sit there like checking the box, like Pat was a Strongsville. He's an Ohio guy. He went to school here. He worked here. He went to FAU. Obviously, was at Washington State. Like there was just a big familiarity, and you knew that he understood how Ohio State operated. And believe me, I love Pat. I think Pat would have done a great job here. Maybe hopefully one day. I know he's turned down other jobs that maybe would have precluded him from getting this job. And I feel for him on a personal level for wanting this so bad that he was willing to turn down some elite opportunities for that. And maybe, who knows?
Maybe he needed those elite opportunities in order for Ohio State to feel the confidence.
And maybe that's part of it.
And plus, what happened with Washington State in the last few months has not been like particularly appealing. Like they have been.
Yeah, everybody has their own stuff.
They have been pretty voiceless / rudderless as the league around them crumbled. I just don't think that establishes like this vote of confidence.
I wouldn't say that's what's been happening at Washington State.
Well, you wouldn't, but that's what Pat told you to say.
I've never talked to him in my life. His time
I'm just kidding.
Predated mine. What Washington State and Oregon State have done in terms of the lawsuit and putting together the Pac-2 and winning basically the right to control the money is
huge.
Remarkable work from them. And
yeah.
They can't.
They get like $150 million.
They've navigated, I think, the choppiest waters that you ever could in the athletic space and emerged on the other side as well as they probably could have. Like, you can't change that they're in Pullman, Washington, and that there isn't enough fans to watch their games.
It's some of the similar. It's a little bit of the Florida State complex. Like, you can't go back and create history that didn't exist and create like a larger alumni base and different things. But the one thing that was, because everybody gets worried about, this is an Ohio guy, like his ties and all this stuff. And Ted Carter was asked about it. He goes, it wasn't a prerequisite, but it was a plus to have somebody who, is an Ohio guy. And, his mom's from Findlay. Like outside of Findlay, there was a strong contingent
Bjork, not John.
Yeah, not Pat. Pat's from Strongsville, but Bjork's mom is from Findlay. He's like, I am familiar with Ohio. We would vacation here in the summer. It's like my mom's family is still
vacation in Findlay.
No, exactly. Go cruise on over from Kansas.
Beautiful,
Hancock County.
And like watching, being there and seeing his family in like Ohio State jerseys and everything sitting over there on the side. Like, it was refreshing to understand. He's like, I understand how this place works. I understand how important it is. It's like my mom has one Facebook post about Texas A&M and 50 about Ohio State. If I told her I was offered this job and turned it down, she may never have talked to me again. So like, I'm like, all right. So as close as you can get without having somebody who experienced this, grew up here, went to school here, whatever may have been, I feel like he's connecting on that, and there's a personal importance to him that goes beyond the job, because if you screw this up, it's like your mom will probably be pissed at you. And I say minus the probably, and everybody else in her family.
Her hometown will be mad at you.
And like there's an element of that where it's like, hey, he always says it's not about me, it's about the institution. And that was reassuring to kind of hear some of those things in the right way. And I said, do I know he's going to do a great job? I hope he does, because I think that's better for everybody. But yeah,
as far as press conferences went, I thought he did a great job.
As good as you could
knocked it out of the park. And I don't think anything really came out of that where you'd be like, ooh, what about this? I think he did a great job, and we'll see what happens.
The end of the day,
life.
Yeah, at the end of the day, is like, again, I don't know if Pat Chun would have worked here either. I can't really say that I'm an advocate for any one over the other, because it's so hard to actually evaluate success of athletic directors. We focus on this show and in our jobs 99.9% of the time on football. And what else is left would go to basketball. But that's not the nature of the actual job itself. So, like, we'll talk about decisions that Gene made that are high profile, whether that was the end of the Thad Matta regime or the not taking a bowl ban in 2011 and make sweeping assessments about, is this person a good athletic director or a bad athletic director? Well, he's in charge of 34 other sports other than those two. He's been put on every single panel Gene Smith has that the NCAA has, and there's some element of that that's applies to Ross Bjork as well.
But what those guys did say is like, this is football is
King.
the king. It is the one that drives everything else.
It was nice to hear that, to be honest.
It was refreshing.
Afraid to say it, but it's the truth.
That's what Ohio State.
Yeah, I liked it.
I've got a bunch of like gardener snakes, and then we've got the one cobra that stares us in the face.
Exactly.
Like, understand?
Don't worry about the gardener snakes.
I've got to make sure that this guy is in
Keeps all these guys safe.
Keep the cobra happy.
The Cobra is keeping all the little ones safe and just saying.
Yeah, no, that checks out. It wasn't the analogy I expected, but it was probably the most apt one that you could have. We were going to talk some about Julian Sayin, Burm.
Sure, let's talk Sayin.
Saying.
Really good player.
I'm just saying.
How did that happen?
Yeah, what happened there?
When you walk in to a room and the quarterback who you had circled as the number one player at the position for the last year calls and says, you know what, I actually want to come play there because Nick Saban retired. Part of you goes, well, damn it, why didn't you want to play here first? And then the other part of you goes, well, you're still the player we had circled as number one quarterback on our board, and how do you say no to that?
It was Nick Saban.
And it's Nick Saban. But yeah, it's clear that Ohio State was not immediately sold on the idea for reasons that have probably been rehashed over and over on other positions in the past. And there is a risk of anytime you bring in someone into an established room, and I think the beauty of this is that it's not that established because you just added Aaron Nolan 2 weeks ago, and you just added Will Howard 2 weeks ago.
You went from 2 to 5 in like
2 weeks.
Yes.
So, like, I think that made the decision to change their minds Friday afternoon into Friday evening a little easier, realizing that, hey, you know what? If we upset this apple cart right now, this apple cart has been here for 15 minutes. So let's not spend too much time worrying about loyalty and blah, blah, blah. The goal, the responsibility of Ryan Day, the responsibility and the duty of the Ohio State football program is to win football games. And so bringing in a player that is, in your mind, the best quarterback in the country in the class of 2024, you cannot say no. You can't say no. No matter how much your internal machinations are saying, this feels like wrong to do to someone, or feelings don't matter in football.
Gosh, Rick Atsley's so great. But outside of that, I think if you have honest conversations with the guys, the good news is like this year, Will Howard. I mean, I think everybody's safe to say if one of those other guys beats him out, either great. A, they're awesome,
and you're winning a national championship,
or B, you have vastly misjudged the other element of it. So I think it could be a good situation.
4 years of evaluation.
Yes, but this is going to be kicked. Like you'll have guys compete in the spring. Maybe someone leaves this year, maybe not, depending on how the reps are divided. But this is going to be, a year from now situation that you're digging into, and this is the reality of college football. And so you tell the guys, you're honest with them about it. This is how it's going to work. And evaluate, and you know what? I understand that there's going to be departures at some point in the future.
When you commit to Ohio State, you are told the best of the best is coming here, and you need to be ready.
Top gun will make you better.
Be ready, or you will be passed up. And that doesn't change if the guy that gets added 2 weeks after signing day, or the start of the semester, or a month after signing day.
Aaron Nolan was still here today, so he didn't leave.
No, and he's saying the right things. And the fact is, none of the stuff that's being said really matters. We got spring ball coming up, and then you'll start to see how things shake out. And if opinions change or feelings at that point change, like, hey, maybe this isn't the way it's working out for me, then we'll relook at it, or whatever.
Reassess.
We'll reassess it at the end of April. But until then, like, there's no point in worrying about who might leave or who, because this is the byproduct of the decisions made. So whatever else happens, that's what you earned, right? So it's big news. He's a really good quarterback. We watched him in Miami at a 7-on-7 last January.
This like a year
ago today, and he was phenomenal. He was the best quarterback there, and I was telling people that I think he's the best passer in the country. He's not the biggest guy. He's not Will Howard's size, but he's not Bryce Young size. He's good 6'1", almost 6'2". So he's to me, Bill and I talked about it on the analysis of the decision, and like there's a little bit of like Bryce Young and a little bit of Joe Burrow in his game, like the way he operates in the pocket. Not like he doesn't have like the same personality Joe does, or the same agility / playmaking ability Bryce does, but there's a combination in there somewhere. He's very, very good in the pocket, feels that pressure really well, very accurate passer. I think he completed like almost 80% of his passes as a senior. Like he's a very good passer. He's a very like polished young quarterback, which is rare for a guy coming into college.
So you're saying he could win the job?
I think he would have won Alabama's starting job this year.
Really?
I really do. Because especially with if he would have stayed and with the things going on with Milroe and the new staff, I don't think that Kalen DeBoer's staff would have chose Milroe.
It's interesting.
Well, that's very interesting.
Well, that makes.
Well, how about that?
I was not expecting
spicy
that.
Burm.
I
here
like
we go.
the spicy Burm.
Heading into March, it's going to be here before we know it. For Ohio State's back for spring ball, they've been busy throughout January. Gave us a lot to talk about on a wide-ranging episode in the Horseshoe Lounge, the live show. It's brought to you by Roosters, and you can get some mac and cheese bites. They're always a 10 out of 10. Take my word for it on Appetizer Thursday. Thanks to Nicole Cox and Roosters for having us in. Thanks to Jay-Z, Bob, Burm, and Bill will be back in here next week. We'll see you then.